All right, welcome, welcome, welcome. It's your girl AniYa A. Present time 8:36 p.m. You know, I don't feel super bad tonight because it's a lot earlier than expected. The reason being is because, like I just shared with these beautiful people behind the scenes, we've had a long and tremendously hard day today, but we're fighting through it. And as we get ready to welcome in our friend, he is an attorney and he is somebody we really and truly respect. We just want to say thank you so much that he's coming on board. We're working on a few things behind the scenes. So we're working on, oh, people are sending messages. We're working on not only the setup and all of that jazz, but we have literally some great news that I'm going to share after we play our opening song. So bear with your girl AniYa A as we play our opening song, which you all know and you love. We don't own the rights to the song at all. It's Latchy, it's our time. So tune in, tell a friend, and every message that comes in will answer, comment, all of that jazz. Right now, you're listening to Latchy. It's our time. We just want a piece of the pie. So we pack our bags and run. Said we pack our bags and run. Trying to walk on the wall. Cause there's nothing we cannot overcome. Nothing we cannot overcome. They don't realize. They don't realize. We're gonna take our turn. We're gonna rule the world. Cause it's our time. Our time to fly. We're gonna take our turn. We're gonna rule the world. Cause it's our time. Our time to fly. They're not gonna take us alive. They must not know how we do. They sure don't know how we go. We're gonna fight to survive. They will not knock us off or through. They will not knock us off or through. They don't realize. They don't realize. We're gonna take our turn. We're gonna roll the way. It's our time. Our time to go. We're gonna take our turn. We're gonna roll the way. It's our time to fly. They'll see with their own eyes. It will come to no surprise. We'll climb the rock most high. Oh, it's not my new chapter. Fill the pages of love, life, and laughter. I pack my bag, look ahead into the night, and I'm ready to claim my dreams, and I'm ready to take the flight. And I'll admit it in my heart, I feel a little fear of racing for my destiny. I gotta keep my conscience clear. The blue skies got a starship standing on. It's my turn, and I'm ready to take the world on. We're gonna take our time. We're gonna rule the world. Rule the world. We're gonna take our turn. We're gonna rule the world. It's our time. Our time to fly. We're gonna take our turn. We're gonna it's our time to fly. All right, all right, all right, guys. So that was our song that we love to play because it just reminds us to stay powerful, stay amazing, stay blessed, but most importantly, like never give up. And again, the young lady who sings that song, for a lot of you that don't know, she is actually fully blind. Lachi is one of my favorite people on the planet because of her perseverance, her character, her love for her craft. I always tell you guys, right? Do not give up on yourselves, no matter what the world is saying, no matter what's going on around you. Like, if you have a craft or a desire to do something amazing, go out there, kick ass, go do it. Because at the end of the day, you're going to waste your gift. Like, the only people that don't succeed are the people that don't try. Oh, I love how I said that. The only people that don't succeed are the people that don't try. If you use my quote, make sure you tag me. Thank you very much. Okay. With that being said, guys, we have our friend, the attorney, Mr. Carlton T. Myers, in backstage, who's going to be coming on in just a few minutes. But here's some hot tea for the afternoon for you guys, right? So on my way to come back to do the show earlier, I ran into a very good friend. In my mind, he's a good friend, right? And I've known him for like half a year, and he works for, drumroll please, the amazing, my best friend, District Attorney Alvin Bragg. Now, here's the funny part. This young man, hopefully I can interview him or Alvin Bragg soon, or both of them, or however God is going to do that or whatnot, right? But the funny part is he got some hot tea that he's already shared with your girl AniYa A. And it's so amazing because I wasn't prepared for what he had to say to me in regards to Mr. Bragg, because I didn't know certain things were going on. But that's why your girl AniYa A always asks the hard questions, because I'm like, what's going on, sir? You know, how you guys doing? I am praying for you, which I am. I always pray for the people, but I also want to know what the melee is. How? So let me calm it down. He shared some good info, some great tea, but I don't want to break the confidentiality until I get the okay that I can share this. And besides, we're going to wait for that interview with him very soon. So I had to share that information with you guys because honestly, what's going on in politics, politics with these politicians is annoying as hell. And my prayer is that we as a community continue to rise up against the foolishness that's going on. Real quick, the Dems, they're not doing enough. The Democratic people, they're not doing enough, they're not strong enough, they don't have enough power behind their votes, etc. A lot of stuff doesn't get passed or whatnot. And it's frustrating because they actually care, you know, in my mind or whatever. Look, I don't know. And then the Repubs are literally people. The Repubs are literally people that are repulsive in my mind. Not one of them, guys. Don't quote me. Don't come for your girl AniYa A. But here's the bottom line with the Repubs. They love the NRA because the NRA loves to give them the bag. They love to do things that just don't go like with the humanity side of things, right? Like they're so inhumane a lot. Now, this is not against all Republican people. Do not come for me because either way, you're going to get a clap back anyway. My new friend, Mr. Kedrick, I don't know how to pronounce his name, is on live. Thank you for tuning in, Mr. Kedrick. Let me wave so you can know that I just shouted you out because you're actually a good guy. You listened to me today as I poured out my whole entire heart. Y'all don't need to know what's going on. Anyway, so we're live. Thank you so much, Miss Christina Lasta, who's watching from Cali. Two birds of the same, two wings of the same bird. Thank you, Christina. Thank you. And here's the bottom line. Like, I was somebody who had high hopes and aspirations in the political arena to hopefully make an effective change. You're going to see a new flyer dropping in a little bit because at the end of the day, I wanted to see some change happening, especially for my parents' country, Haiti. And obviously, I did my best, but I was hoping to get more people riled up and excited and to help out and to make change. But child, let me say something. Politics is not for the weak. So if you out there, politician, doing your thing. God bless your life. Keep doing it for the people or whatever, because at the end of the day, it's not easy. I've had several days and courses or whatever, not actual physical courses in college, but because of how I started in the political arena, I had access to a whole lot of behind the scenes stuff. And I will say this, it is not as easy as it seems. A lot of people think politicians just go in and they just write these bills, they just write these amendments, they just do this legislative, whatever craziness. No, people, it's so hard because the verbiage is so tricky a lot of the times. So like if you're actually in office and you want to pass something or whatever you want to call it, you have to go through hoops because there's always people opposing and it's like they have to vote on stuff and it becomes very, very tricky. I know this because I had behind the scenes access, and honest to God, I feel for the politicians. Now, do I feel bad enough that I'm not going to support people because of the hard work that they're trying to put forth and it's not going through? No, I'm going to always support, especially behind the scenes, if I see the efforts. However, I could tell y'all something, it's not easy. So Christina Laster, let me know what you think about the political arena in your community, and let's see how we can make change this, because that's what it's all about, right? Okay, with that being said, let's move forward. This is a lengthy bio from Mr. Carlton T. Myers, but we're going to try to get through it. It says Carlton T. Myers, the second Esquire. Yesterday, we spoke to a brother, Mr. James, who's the third. This is the second guy. Okay, good. Is a member of the Middle Tennessee chapter of NAN, as the founder, owner, and consultant of Myers Strategic Solutions, LLC. Oh my God, people, I'm not able to talk right now. Don't call me. He consults with communities nationwide to reimagine public safety by using the community empowerment, centered approach to identify, strategize, and implement long-term and positive, let's remember, positive change in practices, policies, and culture through the CAT method. He's going to explain that to us a little bit deeper. I know it's an acronym, and I think I just read it, but no, he's going to have to explain that method. Mr. Myers directed the National Criminal Justice Reform Program at NAACP National Office and co-authored the Legal Defense Educational Fund, Inc. in Washington, D.C. as policy, wow, this is so small, excuse me, policy council for, you know what, maybe if I turn this device, it's not working. Okay, you know what, let's let him in because this is in very tiny, tiny print and I feel bad for keeping him on hold. So hold on, guys. This print is super tiny. Welcome, attorney. Can you hear me okay? I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Come back in or try to put the volume up real quick. And attorney, your letters, your words are so small on my device. I don't know what print this is, but I'm trying to make it through. But I wanted to let you in so that you could know that I'm here reading. And as you can hear me, I'm reading your bio, but the letters are so small. But that's okay. We're going to get through it together because the information is very powerful and amazing. Okay, and it goes to say, co-authored the National Criminal Justice Reform Program at NAACP National Office and NAACP Born Suspect Racial Profiling Report, published in 2014. He also worked for NAACP.
Hello, can you hear me?
Educational Fund, Inc.
Okay.
in Washington, D.C. as policy counsel for the Baltimore, Maryland, North Carolina, North Charleston, South Carolina, and New York City, also in Missouri. Additionally, Mr. Myers directed criminal justice reform in Florida at Southern Poverty Law Center and led the criminal justice reform program at Heartland Alliance in Chicago, Illinois. Furthermore, Mr. Myers has recently worked with community members, local lawmakers, and law enforcement on advocating for public safety reforms, such as, number one, consulting with the city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which we've talked about in great detail. Congrats on that. The Milwaukee Police Department, the Milwaukee Fire and Police Commission, and community advocates to address crime and improve community police
Police relations.
relations, yes, through the development and the implementation of Milwaukee's citywide safety plan. Number two, working on the officer involved shooting of Patrick Leola as the special advisor for public safety with the NAACP Greater Grand Rapids branch in Michigan. And number three, amending the City of Grand Rapids administration policy on surveillance equipment and services to provide community members with more involvement and decision-making authority in the acquisition, use, and development of surveillance equipment and services by all entities. And I'm just gonna pause it there because like I said, you're gonna tell us a lot more of your specialties and your work. It's just with this, look how it came out on my device. It's super.
Oh, you have it on your phone.
Because I
Okay.
can't read it on the laptop, and then I don't bring out the iPad for the platform. So what happens is it looks bigger on the laptop real quick as we go in, and then I get it here, and I'm like, whoa, Nelly. So that's why it's very, very small there, but it's usually larger. I should have done a double check prior to going in. So either way, let us welcome the astounding, amazing, brilliant attorney, CARLTON T. Myers, Esquire, and you're the second.
Yes.
Awesome. So now that I've read a little bit about you, we have our Tennessee family watching. We have those in LA watching. We have my new friends from Tennessee and from Afghanistan watching. And I'm so happy because we have people everywhere watching so far. So now we can go ahead and say, welcome and thank you for joining the AniYa A show.
Well, thank you for having me. And, good evening to everybody who is tuning in.
Excellent, excellent. And do me a favor, turn up your volume a little bit more, please, if you can. Or is that the highest?
No, it's not. Can you hear me now?
Okay. Yes.
Uh-oh, what's going on? Not letting me.
All right, and as we wait on that, I know you have a lot of great information you're going to share tonight. So I'm going to remind the people to send in their questions, their comments, and their concerns for the attorney so that we can get some responses here. And Cheryl is watching. Cheryl says, hey, we can hear you. Perfect. Okay, so they can hear you. Good. Okay, I was just making sure. So you can go ahead. Now? Yeah, yes. I just wanted to make sure that they could hear you over there on their end.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So we have several people watching. So go ahead, attorney. Let's talk. So you are here with us tonight, but you're not in Chicago tonight. You're where again?
Well, no. Tonight I'm in Chicago, but I work across the country. Essentially, what I do is I'm a consultant. I'm a national public safety and policing reform expert and consultant. And I've been doing this work for over a decade all across the country. And I work with essentially the key public safety stakeholders that you find in every community. For instance, community groups, law enforcement, lawmakers, private business, the media. So I work with all of them. And essentially what I do is I help them to break out of their silos when it comes to developing solutions for public safety challenges. And then I help them to come together and work on it together. And most importantly, to make sure that the individuals in every community who live in zip codes where there's high levels of crime and also high levels and a history of high levels of negative police interactions like racial profiling, excessive use of force, sexual misconduct, etc. Those community members especially are involved in, have knowledge of, and have substantive decision-making authority over all direct police-civilian interactions and over all decisions that have a direct impact on public safety. And the reason why I'm working on it through that methodology by developing these processes and mechanisms that reflect equity and inclusivity is because in order for us to have long-term change for public safety challenges, we need to make sure that the people that are closest to the problems are also the people that are closest to the solutions. So they have to be at the helm when it comes to decision making.
Let me ask you, what does that mean in layman's terms for those that are tuning in and watching? When you say those that are closest to the problems have to be closest to the solutions, which I kind of understand, but I want you to break that down for us because on the AniYa A show, even though we don't have the millions of viewers yet, we are working on it. And what we want to do is hopefully get people to understand that the people we bring on this platform actually have substance and they have something to say. So what that means is we want you to break down some of these key things. Also, before I forget, you had an acronym, CAT method. So I don't know exactly what that stands for, but I know you do. So please break down both of those theories and topics for us, please.
Yeah, so essentially what I'm saying is that there's been a lot of what's over the years. Like, for instance, we had President Obama's 21st Century Policing Task Force report recommendations. We also had, through the defund movement, a series of solutions that focused on community-led responses instead of having law enforcement respond. There was also, when Trump was president, a lot of law and order initiatives that were being put forward, reminiscent of back during the war on drugs era, back when Nixon was president, right? And we even saw that come up again when Bill Clinton was president with the 1994 violent crime bill, right? These tough on crime laws. So these are all what's, essentially, these are all solutions, right? That have been put forward under different presidential administrations to address public safety challenges and policing in America. However, what I'm saying is, even with all of those solutions that have been provided, we are still seeing the same problems occurring and reoccurring over and over again when it comes to crime and community police relations, right? Just this year, we had Tyree Nichols, where we had 5 Black officers essentially beat him to death on camera, okay? Which a lot of people were surprised because they were like, well, didn't we already go through this in 2020 with George Floyd and Breonna
George
Taylor?
Floyd, correct.
Right? And then we had all of these solutions that came out of that, the defund movement, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act in Congress, et cetera. But even with all of these solutions that have been produced, at the end of the day, we're still having the same issues happening all across the country. There's no real change, right? If anything, it was a short-term change, which we did see that. We saw Derek Chauvin get convicted. We saw pattern of practice investigations get reinitiated under President Biden. All of those are short-term solutions, but we're still seeing Tyree Nichols type incidents happening, right? So at the end of the day, what I'm saying is the reason for that is because we're focusing so much on the what's, right? So much on all these solutions like 21st century policing, defund, law and order, et cetera, instead of focusing more so on the hows, right? You can have a bunch of what's, but if you don't have the how figured out, then the what's are just there looking good. They're not going to produce the desired outcome, being long-term change and transformation. In order for that to happen, you have to have what's and you need to have hows. You just can't have what's. So what I do is I work with communities on how we can establish solutions, mechanisms, and processes based on whatever they want to do. If they say we want more body-worn cameras for our law enforcement, or we want more de-escalation training, or we want a civilian complaint review board, okay? These are all what's. The big question is, okay, how are we going to make this come true? How are we going to implement this? And what I'm saying is what we need to do to have for a successful long-term what to be put in place and implemented over a long period of time with success, we need to do it in a way where the how brings about equity and inclusivity for those individuals that are living in those zip codes and neighborhoods where there's high levels of crime and high levels of negative police interactions like racial profiling, excessive use of force, et cetera. And the reason is that when we look at all these solutions that have been provided over the years, that's the one thing that has not been done yet, that we haven't done yet, right? We've done all these other things, but we have not actually allowed these particular community members to be at the helm of decision-making, to be involved in, to have knowledge of what's going on with public safety. And they be the ones to decide, because at the end of the day, you have to understand, these are individuals that live in the parts of the community where whatever reforms are being implemented are going to have a direct impact on them, on their kids, on their friends, on their family, because they live in these communities, okay? They don't have an option to say, okay, I'm here today, and then later on, I'm gonna go to another community, and then I'm gonna come back tomorrow. No, this is their home. So for them, whatever's happening there, they experience it on a daily level. So that's why they have to be at the helm of decision-making. And that's something that we have not seen in the US in a big way when we're talking about solutions for public safety and policing reform. So that's something I specifically work on. And I'll tell you what the CAP method is, because the CAP method is essentially the methodology on how we can make this idea, this concept that I'm talking about with you, into a reality.
Okay, perfect. And that's what I actually wanted to get to, because we have so many different groups, so many different organizations, so many different things occurring. But it's so true what you're saying, because I go into these meetings and I'm like, okay, when are we going to put these types of, like plans into place or what have you? Yes, there's organizations that get funded a lot, especially in New York. I'm referring to New York. I don't know how it's done in other states because, Lord, I wasn't really into community like that, back in the day. I was too young for all of that. But either way, I have been to several meetings in different, places. That's another story. But let's go back. New York City. You go into these we have these things called community boards, what have you. There's a billion of them all over the place. You go in, you sit down, people come in, they speak, they say all these great things. And then afterwards, it seems like nothing in my mind. Of course, there are things occurring, but that's why I wanted you to break down a little bit more about these solutions, the how, the, et cetera, because we want to know, how do you think you are able to make effective change with your ideas? Because at the end of the day, I mean, the crime is going up. Everything is looking crazy in America. I'm leaving America, by the way. I didn't know if you knew that, but I'm letting you know
I did
now.
not. Where are you going?
Either Switzerland, London, both, because I'll be able to fly back and forth. It's not a big deal. But I made my
Okay.
announcement because I'm tired. I'm tired. The NRA is getting paid. Black people are always getting killed first, and there's no justice first. So that's why I wanted you to break down your, ideas so that we can understand. Europe, they can't even carry guns there. They cannot, especially in London. And in Switzerland, I think they have weapons, but it's not profound as in the United States. They have a few guns possibly, but as soon as they see big machine guns in New Zealand, Australia, Europe, whatever, those things are banned. Here in America, no, it's all Gucci. Like, go ahead, I get AK-79. It's all good. But like, it's a problem. So moving forward, we want to thank you for sharing that great idea. Have you seen success yet in this implementation in what you're working on to definitely bring forth change in the community through your methodologies?
Well, yeah, I have, and I do want to detail the methodology real quick, briefly with you. And so everything I just explained to you about like making sure that directly impacted community members are involved in, have knowledge of, have substantive decision-making authority when it comes to like developing strategy and deploying strategy on public safety challenges, like for instance, human trafficking, drug trafficking, gun trafficking, being a part of that stuff, not only being a part of, for instance, the hiring and promotions of law enforcement, the training of law enforcement, development and modification of departmental policies, data collection, analysis, and public reporting of data related to law enforcement activities, and of course, most importantly, discipline of law enforcement, which also ties into getting directly impacted people involved in and participating in the negotiations of the collective bargaining agreement, meaning negotiations of police union contracts. All of this stuff is what I call the community empowerment centered approach, okay? Maybe, CECA, whatever, but the community empowerment centered approach. Now, the vehicle for the community empowerment centered approach is what you referenced earlier, the CAP method. And the CAP method, it consists of 3 components. Each component must be achieved in order for the CAP method to be successful. So the first component is community empowerment. That's what the C stands for, right? And community empowerment essentially means, like I said earlier, it entails community members, especially those who are directly impacted, being involved in, having knowledge of, and having substantive decision-making authority over all direct police-civilian interactions. And like I said earlier, the reason why this is important is because the people closest to the problems are also the people closest to the solutions. So if we want long-term solutions, we need those individuals especially to be at the helm of that decision-making. The other, now the A, stands for accountability, and this involves creating an inhospitable environment for law enforcement officers who engage in misconduct by establishing both internal and external accountability mechanisms that would work together. And I could talk a little bit about that a bit later, about what that can look like. The last component is transparency. Now, typically transparency is, let's say people define it as like a law enforcement agency being above board with them, being candid with them about their law enforcement activities, like public reporting of use of force data, public reporting of traffic stop data, et cetera. I actually define transparency more broadly as the interconnectedness and coordination amongst what I call the four aspects of the community, one being law enforcement, which includes the sheriff's office, state and local police. The next one being elected and appointed government officials, that's both state and local, and would also include government agencies. The next one being community members, and this includes directly impacted individuals, direct service providers, community-based organizations, private business, et cetera. And then the last one being the local news and media. Now, according to my definition of transparency, all four of those aspects of the community would have to work together as one community to support public safety and ensure police accountability through more so proactive rather than reactive strategies. So all of that together is the CAP method. And all you have to do is make sure that any kind of initiative, any kind of policy, legislation, whatever you're doing, make sure that each one of those components, you can check the box on it. Because if you can't do that, then that means it did not pass the sniff test. And it is not going to be a long-term solution for public safety change.
Do you work with local political figures? Do you work with politicians? I call them politicians because they're so tricky. But either way, I want to be positive tonight. Do you work with them in passing some of these ideas, methodologies, and these desires to see effective change in our community?
Yes, actually, ever since 2020, we had the big protests coming out of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor's tragic deaths, and other people that had died at the hands of law enforcement as well.
Correct.
We had, as you know, a number of state lawmakers and local lawmakers wanted to respond to the biggest protests we've ever had in US history, calling for substantive police accountability, right? And also for defund. And so in response to that, a lot of local lawmakers and law enforcement were very receptive to making substantive change. So I worked with a number of state lawmakers actually on getting state policing reform legislation passed. 5 of the states that I worked in passed the policing reform legislation that I worked on into law. Those states are Illinois, Wisconsin, Indiana, Missouri, and Maryland. And then on the local level, I did a lot of work, and I'm still doing work in, for instance, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm working right now consulting with the city of Milwaukee and with community advocates and Milwaukee Police Department and the Civilian Oversight Authority on developing what we call a citywide reimagined public safety plan that would address both the crime and community police relations, all of it in one plan that will be founded and grounded in the CAP method, right? The community empowerment centered approach that I just detailed earlier. And so essentially what we're doing for that, it's been about going on 3 years. We spent the first year planning out what we're going to do to address these issues by being inclusive and equitable in regards to engaging with the community. And then once we put together that idea of what we're going to do, we are now implementing it. And so what we're doing is we're holding 15 community listening sessions, 1 per aldermanic district. There's 15 aldermanic districts in Milwaukee. And the reason why we're doing it 1 per district for about 3 to 4 hours once a month is because in Milwaukee, well, just like everywhere, we understand that public safety challenges are very granular. They're very minute. They happen on such a specific small level that you can't just do a citywide, community listening session. You have to do it by district. Like, you remember I talked about zip code? by zip code, you see differences in the public safety challenges, which means that you're also going to see differences in the public safety solutions. So we're making sure to capture all that information with these sessions, and then we're going to put that into a report that'll be published next year. And that report, the recommendations in it, are then going to feed into the development of this plan that, once the plan is finalized next year, will then be enacted into local law for long-term change. And like I said, this plan will be founded on the CAP method. So we'll include that as well.
I love it. And we have comments, lovely sight to see. Thank you, Mr. Roberts, who's always here, Mr. Gregory Roberts, who's always here to encourage your girl, AniYa A. Miss Tamika Shah is watching. She's an artist. She is in the entertainment space. She's loving this, show tonight. We have the one and only Mr. Wiley on this evening. Mr. Wiley is the host of his own show, The Wiley Show. I've been on his show for a reason that I'm not going to talk about tonight, and he's interviewed me. But either way, he's a good, he's like a huge YouTuber. So the importance of that is he's watching, and I think it might be the first time Mr. Wiley's actually here with us. But either way, I wanted to make sure Mr. Wiley connects with you after this, because you are in that Chicago area. And it's just so funny that Mr. Wiley is out there as well. I feel like tonight, he's been in Chicago. There was a new mayor elected. I want to say Mr. Jones.
Yeah, Brandon Johnson. Yes.
Yes, perfect. So Wiley is out there for that. So shout out to Mr. Wiley. He's loving this topic. He said, tell the truth. And it's so true what you're sharing. And it's unfortunate that my platform, again, is growing steadily. But some nights we have thousands of people. But again, I'm going through something, so it's been a very rough couple of weeks here, but that's okay. We're going to get through it, and we're going to replay the show because we want people to understand the great work you're working on, and in working with you and sharing the information. We hope more people come on board with you so that you can work with others in our communities, because we have a lot of issues. Now, real quick, for Carlton, can you speak more about components of public safety beyond policing and why the community understanding of these is important? Also, I hope you remember that part, right?
Yep.
Yes. And then substantive definition, having a firm basis in reality and therefore important, meaningful, or considerable. So those two things are for you, Mr. Carlton, and then I'll get to Mr. Wiley. I'm excited. Go ahead.
So I can definitely answer the first one. The second one, I'm probably going to need you to repeat it, but let me answer the first one first.
Okay.
So when we're talking about public safety beyond policing, number one, I just want to say that, when we talk about like gun violence in urban areas, like in predominantly Black and brown communities, as opposed to gun violence that's like mass shooting, active shooter type stuff. When we're talking about, that kind of particular kind of community violence is probably a better term to use than gun violence, because then it's more broad to include even domestic violence, right? So when we're talking about that kind of community violence, we have to understand that you cannot focus on just addressing violence alone or even crime alone without also addressing policing reform, okay? So I just want to put that out there, because one thing that I'm really big on is when I go into communities, I focus on both, because there's way too much overlap, okay? In other words, we have to understand the reason why crime has gone up in this country since COVID and since 2020 is because when Trump was president, there was a lot of division formed in our country. We had a lot of community members who don't even talk to their neighbors anymore, right? We had law enforcement not engaging with community the way they used to, right? We had a lot of that going on, even local lawmakers not engaging with their constituents.
Correct.
Just a lot of division, a lot. And so because of that, what had happened is that now with, crime happening, community members, especially Black and brown, not trusting law enforcement with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and these other high-profile incidents that we saw on TV when we were sitting during the lockdown in our apartments and houses and homes, right? Is that there's a loss of trust and confidence. And what that means is that when crime does occur in their communities, law enforcement, people are not contacting law enforcement. People are not working with them to solve the crimes. So when that happens, that means that people that are committing the crimes don't get caught. When they don't get caught, crime stays up, public safety goes down. Now, everybody, they've been trying to focus on all these other reasons why crime is up. But at the end of the day, it's all because we are not talking to each other anymore. That is literally all it is. Human beings, we are social organisms. We are social, some people might say animals, okay, which is actually factually true, scientifically speaking,
Mammals.
okay?
Yep.
And mammals, social mammals, right? And so it goes against our DNA, our genetic makeup, for us to be antisocial, especially to a large extent. It's actually hurting our species, our civilization, for us to not be pro-social, to not talk to each other, to not problem solve with each other, to not build relationship with each other, to not transfer knowledge to each other, right? When we're not doing that, then we're not building and we're not resolving. And when we're not doing that, crime goes up, public safety goes down. So what I'm doing is, I'm saying with community empowerment centered approach through the CAP method, that we don't only have this conversation, this transfer of knowledge, this relationship building, this problem solving,
Yep.
but that most importantly, we're making sure that it's equitable and inclusive by making sure that the people most directly impacted by public safety challenges, being both crime and negative police interactions, right? Being both community violence and police violence, right? We want to make sure those individuals are at the helm of decision making. The reason being is that it doesn't matter if it's community violence or police violence, these individuals are dealing with both of them all the time.
Yes.
And whatever reforms,
Facts.
whatever initiatives are going to be implemented are going to directly impact them. So if they're not there at the helm to say, hey guys, you know, you implemented this and it's not working the way that you thought. And these are our ideas on how it could work, or maybe let's just get rid of that and let's do something else, right? And so that's where, in my opinion, bringing in that level of perspective is going to change the culture, is going to change the dynamic, not only of law enforcement, but of that community. Because don't forget, law enforcement is a part of the community. They are. No matter what people want to say about defund or not defund, law enforcement are a part of the community. And so when we're talking about community, we have to also include them in that discussion. And so, you know, I just want to make sure that we understand that it's not one or the other. Right. It's actually both of them that have to be addressed together if we want long-term success and not a short-term Band-Aid.
And that's why I wanted to ask that, because at the end of the day, when we have a crisis, thank you, brother. Gregory Roberts said, brother is right. Power to the people. Fist up, everybody, fist up. We have several people watching. My brother, Peter Griffith, AKA Fat Boy, just joined us. I'm gonna get to brother Wiley's question right now. So real quick, the thing about it is when we have an emergency, the first people we're calling is 911. Who comes first? The police, the fire truck, or the ambulance? And that's why we should always specify, especially if there's a medical emergency or somebody having a mental breakdown, etc. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole tonight. That's a big, big thing in our communities, and we need to understand. Well, let me just share this real quick. Then I'm going to get to this very important question by Brother Wiley. When we have emergencies, and they are literally like a family or a loved one or even a neighbor, what have you, is having a psychiatric breakdown, or they're depressed, or they're not coherent, or something is happening that's not like, you know, that the police should be involved in. Because a lot of times, the first thing the police do is kill our Black men or Black women too. We've seen that happen as well. What we should always do, and this is what I've heard, and I think this is really true, is say we need an ambulance. Even though the police sometimes do come as well, which oftentimes they do, but if it's a medical or mental or emotional emergency, you need to say ambulance or EMS or EMT. You know, I know ambulance from when I was a little girl, but EMT, EMS, medical services instead of the police right away, because that's how we end up with a lot of these shootings from the police. Now, real quick, and then of course we could talk about that, but give me one second, because I want you to definitely answer this one. What does Mr. Myers have to say about the Brandon Johnson plan housing migrants in the Southwest side? Lord, you don't open the can of worms tonight. I don't know if you want to take that, or if this is something that you want to talk to him privately about, but I know your case studies and your practice is more so reform and things like that for violence. But if you do have an opinion on this, please feel free to share.
I mean, all I can say is because he's brand new, so I want to make sure to give him the opportunity to be able to actually be a mayor and make his choices on how he leads before I start, saying and making any statements. Because I think he was just inaugurated on Monday, so
Literally.
literally, he's only been mayor for 3 days. So all I would say is that it seems to me as if something I like about him is that he is taking on something that I like to utilize a lot, which is a very collaborative approach, something I call a big tent coalition approach, meaning that you're working with people who typically don't agree on matters, right? And you're bringing them into the same space because you want people to have that kind of debate, constructive, candid conversation where you're debating. But you're not debating just to argue and debate, you're debating to come to a solution, to come to some kind of a compromise. And the way you do that is to make sure that those meetings and those conversations and those coalitions are always focused on one thing at a time. You don't have them just start throwing everything popcorn style, in the room and start arguing about what they agree, what they don't agree with, and why. What you do is say this, for instance, this is my approach when I go into communities where you have law enforcement versus community members that don't see law enforcement as a part of the community. I always say to them, well, let's focus on what we agree on. Let's focus on something that we all have in common. And that one thing right now is that all of us can agree that we believe all of us deserve to live in a safe and
Yes.
peaceful environment, right? Okay, we all agree on that. So let's just hold on to that, okay? Let that be what anchors us in this initiative, in whatever it is that we're doing, okay? And let's just stay focused on that because we all agree on that. And then once we accomplish our goal with that, we'll find something else that we can all agree on. And then we'll just use that as an anchor to focus on the work we do going forward, so on and so forth. So that was the strategy that I used in Florida when I directed Southern Poverty Law Center's criminal justice reform program for the state of Florida. And we had a big win with me utilizing that strategy with Governor DeSantis, the current governor, who's kind of crazy. He signed off on juvenile justice reform that had a direct impact on Black and brown kids in Florida.
Wow.
And now this is something, this is an issue that is not an issue anymore. Now we're not going to have Black and brown kids who are like, 14 years old, 10 years old, et cetera, getting locked up in adult prisons for committing a felony. That's not going to happen anymore because that was happening before the campaign. So, but this was all a result of a big tent coalition strategy that I utilized. So all I'm saying is that when it comes to answering the question that you asked, I would hope that, Mayor Brandon Johnson will continue. It looks like he's already started using that kind of strategy and collaboration. I just hope that he continues doing that. Now, another way that strategy of everybody coming together, and this ties to what you were just talking about when it comes to people who have mental health needs, right?
Yes.
This is something I did more recently, and how this can be utilized and reflected through state legislation. So like I said earlier, I worked with the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus and other government officials in Illinois in 2020 on drafting some of the policing reform language in the Safety Act. That's Illinois' criminal justice reform law they passed in 2021. And so I worked on a lot of that language. One of those provisions I worked on had to do with mandatory law enforcement trainings as it relates to crisis intervention techniques. In other words, when somebody's in crisis due to mental health needs, substance abuse issues, how should that be addressed in the community? So now in the law that I worked on in Illinois, or the language for the law in Illinois that I worked on, what it says is that when these trainings occur, with these mandatory trainings for crisis intervention for all law enforcement in the state of Illinois, they have to happen annually. So once every year, 40 hours. It doesn't matter if you're a new recruit or if you're an officer who's been working for years, you have to do this training once a year for 40 hours. This training has to include not only law enforcement, it has to be in person, it also has to include family members of people with mental health needs in the community, mental health providers in the community, and community advocates in the community. And the training has to incorporate the experiences of the family members of people with mental health needs, and it has to be hands-on, scenario-based, and will also involve role playing. Now, what does this mean? Two things. Number one, first state law in the country to require that somebody, an individual who does not have a law enforcement background, is required to participate in a mandatory law enforcement officer training. There's never been a state law in the US that requires that. That is huge, especially when we're talking about coming out of Tyree Nichols and George Floyd and all the such. What can be done to change law enforcement officer trainings when it comes to using force? This is one example of what can be done. The second reason why this is important is because this law essentially is saying that the people who are already in the community that are involved in crisis response, being law enforcement, mental health providers, family members of people with mental health needs, and mental health advocates, that instead of them coming together to find out what to do after there's been an officer involved death or shooting or incident of somebody with mental health needs being unnecessarily injured or killed, then coming together and figuring out solutions after the fact, this law is essentially requiring that those same stakeholders, those same parties have to more so proactively rather than reactively come together in this training and strategize, how do we in our community want this kind of situation to be handled? For instance, do we want it to be armed law enforcement who are trained in crisis intervention? Do we want it to be unarmed mental health professionals? Do we want it to be a combination of both of them, like a co-responder model? Or do we want to do what they're doing in some cities in California, where they have unmanned drones, machines, robots that engage with you before a human being officer engages with you to determine how should we respond to this, right? That should be left up to that individual community, okay? Because even in New York City, what happens in the Bronx is not the same as what happens in Queens, is not the same as what happens in Brooklyn, is not the same as what happens in Staten Island, et cetera, et cetera. The policing and the public safety have to align with these differences, the differences in demographics, culture, history. And that, in my opinion, is what this training does. It leaves flexibility for community members and law enforcement and mental health providers to come together and say, well, this is what we want, not what law enforcement wants, what the community, which includes law enforcement, what all of us want together. That's empowerment, okay? That's what this is all about. How do we empower those that are typically disempowered? Through the CAP method, in my opinion. That's the one way that we can do it.
I love that you have these ideals in mind. And my hope is that we literally see some effective change, the sooner the better, because we are losing so many people every single day. What inspires you and motivates you to keep pushing when sometimes there's like really no hope left in these situations? Because I know you work so hard to definitely make this type of change, happen in our communities. But what motivates you? What pushes you? What keeps you going?
Well, I grew up in New York City, born and raised, and I'll be honest, those experiences I went through in New York, I went to college in Atlanta, I experienced some stuff out there being a Black man in the South, and also I went to law school in Vermont, and I've had experiences in New England as well. I've lived all up and down the East Coast, and also in DC. I lived in DC as well for some years. And so, for me, being in this country as a Black person and also traveling to other countries, like I've been to the UK, I've been to Canada, I've been to Trinidad and Tobago and St. Vincent, et cetera. And just seeing how much we focus on race in this country in particular, and like especially the way that, a lot of people say Black Lives Matter, and they'll say that when it comes to out in public or on Facebook or on, whatever, Instagram or whatever, TikTok. But when it comes to the interpersonal relationships, you engaging with a classmate who's, a different lived experience than your own, a Black person or whatever. To me, I'm not seeing that kind of change. And that's what motivates me. Making that kind of change in our society, right? With that interpersonal interaction, when you're engaging with somebody at the bodega, who looks different than you, when you're engaging with a coworker, when you're engaging with a classmate, somebody on the bus or the train, et cetera. When we change that dynamic, when people are starting to be more thoughtful about individuals coming from a different lived experience and actually saying, hey, that's okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. That's what motivates me, because I'll be honest, my whole life, before I was even thinking about being a lawyer, before I was even thinking about doing civil rights, because to be honest, I originally wanted to be a zoologist, doing work in different countries in Africa, trying to help them become more self-sustainable.
Right.
I wasn't trying to do work in America. But over time, the experiences I went through, it really showed me that, here I am trying to, I'm in law school, I'm an educated Black man, and there's not many of us that can say that, especially in my generation, right? A lot of them got locked up and got caught up in the system, okay? Here I am, I have this opportunity, and I'm talking about taking all this skill and talent and going to another country, going abroad to give it out there, when at the end of the day, it's most needed right here
at home. And
at home,
I
right?
look,
And
Marquis,
that's what motivates me. That's what motivates me.
Wiley of the Wiley Show says, preach. You are preaching tonight, sir. And I'm so glad. Again, remind me, when is your birthday again, Mr. Myers? I know you're a friend, but we shouldn't get too deep and things like that, because we do a lot of work together. But when is your birthday again? Because you are on the side of justice and empowerment and all that great stuff. Remind me your birthday.
My birthday is actually this Friday. It's May 19th.
May 19th, happy birthday early.
Thank you.
You're almost on the cusp then, kind of, like it's a couple of days.
I am. I'm on the cusp. Yep. I also, I share a birthday with two very well-known global figures, on one of them being Malcolm X, and the other one being Pol Pot from Cambodia.
Who?
the Pol Pot, the dictator from Cambodia. Yeah, I know, but at the end of the day, they're both very powerful and influential figures in global history.
Send me the name of Pol Pot or Pop Pope or whatever you just said. And
I think it's Polpot, Pol Pot.
Okay, Pol Pot. Well, I'm gonna do Pol Pot when we're done tonight.
Yeah.
Praise the Lord. Happy birthday to Carlton, says Christina Lasser. Thank you for that. No, that's really deep. See, I felt it because we never got that deep in our communication. So for the fact that you share a birthday with the one and only Malcolm X, like that makes sense now. As you all can see, he's super passionate about everything.
And he's also one of my mentors. Malcolm X is one of my mentors. I've looked up to Malcolm X ever since I was a young kid. Yeah.
And I share a birthday celebration with his daughter every year, the baby girl, one of the twins, every year.
Oh, nice.
Every year. And the first time I spoke with her, we could go on forever, but look, the first time I spoke with her and I talked to her, I looked in her eyes and I started weeping because I saw her father through her eyes. I saw her mother through her eyes. And she is a big, big mama's girl. So she's always like, we're going to talk about my mom first here. Malak, I love you, sis.
And their mother was amazing. Betty Shabazz.
She held it down.
Yeah, she did a lot of work before she passed in New York City. I think she had her own radio show in New York.
So much. And their center, have you been to the center yet?
No, I have not. I'm gonna have to check it out next time I'm out there. Okay.
Definitely. We should do a group trip or something. That'd be great.
Okay.
I love Malcolm X. So Wiley, I already asked your question about Brandon Johnson, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure you two connect Mr. Wiley, because I could see that he could be on your show and literally you will have a great time speaking with him. Marquise Wiley of the Wiley Show has thousands upon thousands of followers. I'm still working on my little platform. God is going to bless me, but this brother has been putting the work. And one thing I love about Wiley, I'm going to big him up because Wiley is so smart. Like when you first watch his show, you think he's all about the drama, the sipping the tea, right, Wiley? Like I will watch him for hours. But what really impressed me about this brother and why I want to get you connected is because he's about the social justice movement. This brother cares about what's happening on a daily basis in our communities, in our world. Therefore, the two of you will go hand in hand. As I told you, when you come on my platform, attorney, you never know who's watching, who's listening. And funny enough, after we get off, a lot of times I'll see like the numbers are like 300, 400, 150, 100, when only it says like 5 people are watching, because a lot of people watch without it showing up. So that's why I always encourage the guests, leave your information for the people. Tell the people how they can follow you. Tell the people all the information that they need to support whatever it is you're doing, because you never know, even from tonight, matter of factly, if a movement can come out of this, if we can help you in whatever capacity. I know you, me, and Sister Nix, Lakeisha, we've been trying to get these meetings
Yep.
together
And
every
yeah, in
Friday
Delaware.
in Delaware because they need us
Yep.
out there so bad. That's how we met, actually. And I'm just
Yep.
so glad that you're on here tonight. You know, we have situations happening in Delaware, all over the United States when it comes to our Black men. And unfortunately, it just breaks my heart. But you know what? I'm not going to be sad tonight because I already have a lot on my plate. But I'm just going to say all we can do is keep moving forward and staying positive and supporting people like yourself who's doing the work. And we're not going to ghost you. We're not going to disappear on you. As you can see, I kept my word, right? I was like,
Yep.
you're going to be here. You were like, AniYa, when are we going to make this happen? I was like, you know what? May is usually a busy month for me, and it is every year. And I'm speaking tomorrow, actually. Wait, shameless plug. I want to know if you have any up and coming speaking engagements. We have more people joining us on Instagram. Welcome, welcome, welcome. But I just remembered the reason why it took so long for us to get this together too, attorney, is because of my speaking engagements and Haitian Flag Day month celebration, etc. So not only is it Mental Health Month, it's Haitian Flag Heritage Month. It's something about the Asian Heritage Month. It's Foster Care Task Force, well, Foster Care Awareness Month. Shouts out to you also for connecting us to Christina Laster, Reggie
Yes.
Clay, and of course, Big Mama Cheryl Huff.
Cheryl,
So
that's right.
you made that.
The Middle Tennessee chapter of National Action Network, which I'm also a member of, and
I
very
read
proud
that.
to be.
I read that for sure. I'm
Yep.
so
Yep.
proud of you because you hold it down. And you know what? A lot of people are haters out there. They don't want to connect. They don't want to do any of that. But this brother will connect you. He will keep his word. So I just wanted to share real quick for anybody that's available tomorrow and they want to support the Haitian Flag Day event in Brooklyn. AniYa A will be speaking at the Kingsborough Community College. My start time is approximately 2 p.m. I will be there early tomorrow because I have it in my mind to be there early. But the address is 2001 Oriental Boulevard, Brooklyn, New York, 11235. 2001 Oriental Boulevard, Brooklyn, New York, 11235, where your girl AniYa A will be talking about my activism, especially for Haiti and the work that I've put in. And even though sometimes I feel like it doesn't mean anything because obviously Haiti is a mess, but you know what? Hey, Rome wasn't built in a day, so I'm not going to cry anymore. Either way, moving forward, do you have any up and coming speaking engagements? I know you got a new contract in Florida. Give it up, give it up.
Yep. Yeah, I'll be in Palm Beach County, Florida. Got a contract out there to do similar work that I'm doing in Milwaukee around developing a citywide reimagined public safety plan. I'm also working with the Civilian Oversight Authority called the Community Oversight Board. I have a contract with them consulting with the Civilian Oversight in Nashville, Tennessee, on doing assessing their civilian complaint process and also supporting them in other ways. I don't know if you know that there's been an attack on all civilian oversight authorities through the state law in Tennessee. So we're working, figuring out how to navigate that and still be able to preserve the current existing civilian oversight authorities. So we'll see what happens. And then I'm continuing like this Saturday, like I mentioned, the Milwaukee work. The next community listening session will be this Saturday. So I'll be doing that for 4 hours in Milwaukee. I'll be co-facilitating the community listening session. So I'll be doing that. And then I believe I have some webinars I'm doing next week. There's one I recently did real quick, and I really want to emphasize this with the group. There's a few things that I think just across the country you need to be aware of when it comes to law enforcement. But the number one thing to focus on, I know right now everybody's talking about traffic stops, which is very important because traffic stops lead to an escalation of a lot of incidents, especially involving Black and brown people, which results in unnecessary death, unnecessary severe injury, and also unnecessary arrest. But also understand, like I mentioned earlier, because there's nationally a shortage of law enforcement being hired across the country, and there's also an uptick in law enforcement retiring early and resigning early in their positions. There's not as many law enforcement officers as there were, let's say, before 2020, okay? And because of that, now law enforcement is in a bind because they're still getting a lot of calls for response to, like, issues around reckless driving, issues around, carjackings. We're hearing about like Kias and all that with the
I've been
catalytic
hearing about that
converters.
stuff.
getting stolen, right? So a lot of that's happening. Then you also have the community violence, which is still going on. And that varies by state, by community. It's not happening necessarily across the country like it was back in 2021 and 2022, but it's still happening. So what's happening is that law enforcement are down-staffed, but calls are still up, calling for them to come out and provide service to the community. So what they're saying, and on top of that, law enforcement's getting a lot of money. They're getting money from the federal government, from Biden. They're getting money from state and local governments, and they're getting money from private sources, like a lot of people that have money or businesses that are just giving them money, right? So they have a ton of money. So what they're doing is saying, hey, we got all this money. We don't have the staff, but we have a lot of calls for service. So what are we going to do? Well, one thing that they could do, which was provided as recommendations coming out of the 2020 protest, is give that money to the community. Allow the community to take on the burden of addressing in-crisis response for people with mental health needs, engaging with young people, engaging with, doing wellness checks, et cetera, right? Let the community who's already equipped with community-based orgs, direct service providers, et cetera, let them be the ones leading the way on that community-led response, right? But law enforcement's decided, we don't really need to do that. But what we do need to do, we need to buy a whole bunch of toys. So what they're doing now is they're using that money to purchase speed light cameras, red light cameras,
little
license plate
dogs,
readers,
robot dogs,
Digi dogs, right? The robot dogs that are big in New York now, they're deploying them for patrolling purposes because we're down staffed. So this one robot could do the job of 2 or 3 human beings, right?
And real quick, and we have some type of thing where we don't want them, the little Digi dogs, to carry guns and things like that. I don't want to say too many words that's going to trigger the algorithm. However, there's this thing that you were sharing with me before we started the show. Before every show, I make sure I talk to everybody that comes on, guys, so I can know exactly which way we're heading. That's what producers do, by the way, to make sure we're on the same page. And while we were on the phone, Carlton, I was putting out a message on social media. Yo, y'all better watch this tonight, because what you shared with me was so eye-opening. And I want the people to know, like, it's serious out here. They have, tell them what you told me about the weapons and the little Digi dogs and the robots and all of that.
Oh yeah, because you also have unmanned drones and you have gunshot detection technology. You have all of these technologies that are already being used by law enforcement. And what you don't have, okay, on the local level in particular, and also on the state level, you don't have laws, okay, in place that are establishing guardrails. In other words, we live in a democracy. We don't live in China. We don't live in Russia, which I'm very proud of, okay? So that means that when they're like, when the government, right, being law enforcement, because they are an arm of the government, when they are using cameras on you, when they are, trying to arrest you or detain you, essentially restrict your freedom in any which way that can look like, they can't just do that. They have to actually prove in court that we had to do this because you were such an imminent threat. Like there was a threat that was going to happen like right now. That's why we had to violate your constitutional rights, right? That's essentially what that is. Now, that's what makes us a democracy. That's what sets us apart from Russia and China, where they don't have to prove anything. The government can do whatever they want to you, and they don't have to justify it to anybody, okay? That's the difference. So what we need to do is, considering artificial intelligence, there's ChatGPT, there's the new McDonald's and Wendy's that is completely artificial intelligence run. So they only need one human being to run that drive-through. Okay, they just opened that Wendy's. I think they're opening it this month. McDonald's, they opened that up a few months ago. Okay, so just considering this is here, right? This is not no Terminator 2, Matrix, dystopia science fiction storyline. Okay, this is reality. This is what's happening right now. So my whole thing is this: if we are to learn from all these science fiction novels and everything that we've seen in movies, right? Why don't we get ahead of the curve? Why don't we act like we can do better and actually get the laws on the books so that there's guardrails, so that anytime technology is going to be considered to be bought, purchased, acquired, used, or deployed in any community, Well, in order for you to do that, you're going to have to go before not only the city council, but also go before a civilian oversight committee that will consist of those community members, we talked about earlier, right? That would be from those directly impacted neighborhoods in the community, where now they have to review your application to purchase or acquire or use this technology and how you're going to use it, if there's going to be any disparate impacts on any races, any groups of people, and what's your plan to prevent that, to mitigate that impact. And and so those kind of things need to be put in place, in addition to making sure that there's a complaint process that's easy to use and that everybody knows about. Making sure that there's
no, I don't want to cut you off. Remember that thought. How does one complain about a robot though, and services that are not human led? I mean, I'm just in a state of shock about what you're saying, and I'm pretty sure everybody else watching is as well. There are more comments that I'm going to get to in just a moment, but you are shocking the bejesus out of us. But I knew this was coming because of the Jetsons. I was growing up on the Jetsons. Jetsons, everything was robots, whatever. But also, when I lived in Atlanta, which is crazy that you used to live in Atlanta as well, we never crossed paths in Atlanta. However, when I lived in Atlanta, I lived in Midtown. I had a little efficiency thing going on after I sold my house, a long story. And I'll never forget, one day I walked into the bank, I think it was Chase Bank, and this was in 2007, it had to be. And there was nobody in the bank. And I was like, oh my God, the rapture, Jesus is here. Oh, I'm not going to heaven. I wasn't a good girl then. So I was like, I'm not going to heaven. But then all of a sudden, like, I saw all the machines were like talking to each other. They were doing all their little thing or whatever. Nobody had to service them. Nobody had to do anything. They were kiosks basically running themselves. And when I looked so frightened because I didn't know what to do, because I didn't want to get in trouble for breaking something. You know what I mean? I was so confused. Then that's when somebody emerged from the back and was like, how can we help you? Don't be afraid. This is the way we're doing things. That was about 20 years ago, 15 years ago or so. I don't know what it looks like there now, but that was Midtown, very much different than downtown Atlanta. As you know, Midtown and Buckhead are so different than the rest of the ATL. You know what I mean? I don't know what it looks like now, but I'm pretty sure it looks even busier, crazier with these gadgets or whatever. However, people have to know that this is where we're heading. Second thought on that, real quick. I went into my local hair store. I love the hair stores out here. There's one on every corner and next to the bodegas. Anyway, so next thing you know, I'm asking the brother, like, why you don't have this? Why you don't have that? Why you don't have everything that I need that I usually utilize? And he's like, sis, it's like an outage and everything is just like not coming in right now. And I'm like, wow, it's already so bad that we have all these stores closing throughout, the BX, Harlem, you name it. Like all of our stores are closing down. Now, even the local beauty hair supply store, I can't even get my nail polish. I can't get my lip gloss that I like, my foundation, whatever. I play a lot with makeup, and it's a long thing. But anyway, so next thing you know, he tells me, he's like, the reason that these stores are really closing is because we've hired the amount of money, what do you call it? The pay rate. So because everything is like $15 and up now.
Oh, the minimum wage.
Minimum wage, thank you. That's essentially the reason that a lot of these places are closing. This is a business owner of like 30 years is talking to me and explaining to me what that really looks like for our community, which I wasn't aware of initially. I just thought it was because they couldn't afford the rent anymore. It's like, nah, everybody had to get rid of their people that work for them. And now they have to close down. But go ahead with what you're saying real quick. Instagram, I'm coming right back live. I see a lot of new people. Dan Lamb, the 1891, come back with me in just a minute and send me that request again. Thank you. I'll be right back. Go ahead. I'm just shutting down this Instagram and putting up another device for that. We had over 15 people watching on Instagram already, but Facebook is where it's at tonight. Go ahead. Go ahead. So you were going to say something.
So, what I was going to say is that, essentially, that we have to understand that, robots, artificial intelligence is already here. The major concern is this, two things. One thing, and this is what I was trying to say earlier, all of these robots, all these gadgets that we're talking about, robot dogs, unmanned drones, gunshot detection technology, they all have sensors, okay? If the sensors are picking up on video, meaning visual, or if they're picking up on audio, meaning sound, they're picking up on data, okay? They're picking up on information that belongs to you, okay? And they're using it, being the government, being law enforcement, and whoever else has access to this data. A lot of times private business will also have access to the data, depending on whatever contract they have with the local government agency, if it be a law enforcement or even sanitation. You know, a lot of these city government agencies also use surveillance technology. So, you know, this is not just law enforcement, but all I'm trying to say is this, that all of them have cameras, okay? And what they're doing is they're collecting and have sensors. They're collecting all this information. And what they do is they're either sharing the information, we don't know with whom, or we don't know for what purpose, or they're selling the information. I don't think people realize how much money data costs, that's actually how Facebook or Meta, whatever they're called, that's how they make most of their money, is off of selling your data that you post. And they sell it to commercial private businesses, and then they use that data to determine how best they can sell products or their services to you. And they also use it now to generate, I don't know if you've seen these artificial intelligence generated commercials. That's become a big thing now. They have some of these beer commercials now that are a product of this. And it's really weird stuff, but it's like actual images of human beings that these algorithms,
it's artificial intelligence, and
that they pick up off of the internet, right? These, you know, when people post pictures of themselves and they don't put on their privacy settings, they just take these images, right? And then they use it to create these commercials. So either way, this all has to do with your body, your image. This all belongs to you, and you have no idea what's happening to it. Why? Because there's no laws on the books that require that the local government agencies need to let you know what they do with it. There's no laws on the books requiring any kind of data collection, data analysis, and publication of data. In other words, when we get the data, we need to break it down by race, gender, age, and location, at least by that, so that we get a sense of what are you doing with this data? Are there any racial disparities, age disparities, gender disparities, location disparities, right? So we need to know, what are you doing? Who is it impacting? And is it a problem? Because if it is, we need to do something about that. We need to troubleshoot, right? And so, but you can't solve a problem until you know what the problem is. And that's why the data is so important, to know what they're doing with it. So that's one guardrail that can be done by local law or state law, right? Making a requirement for that. And we've done that, actually. The work I've been doing in Grand Rapids, Michigan since 2020 has been focused on that, because in Grand Rapids, Michigan, their police chief and local government, they were going to purchase both gunshot detection technology, which, you know, let's say a gunshot sound goes off, within 60 seconds, it will let law enforcement know, the technology, that the gunshot has gone off. Law enforcement will respond as if it was like gang members shooting each other, and they'll have their guns out, ready to aggressively engage with anybody in the area, no matter what the context is. And that actually resulted in several unnecessary deaths and people being severely injured. One of those deaths in particular, which Mayor Brandon Johnson here in Chicago has been talking a lot about, even before he was elected, is Adam Toledo, 13-year-old Latino boy who was gunned down by police unarmed, all of it because gunshot detection technology called ShotSpotter essentially told law enforcement, gunshots fired. They had no context. They showed up ready to shoot and kill. They chased him even when he didn't have a gun in his hand. And when he complied with their orders to turn around with his hands up, shot him once in the chest and killed him. Now, I don't think the officer did it because they're like, yeah, I'm gonna kill this guy. I think the officer did it because ShotSpotter told the officer that you are in danger when you come into this situation, right? They didn't tell the officer, well, there's just a teenage boy and an adult playing with a gun in the neighborhood. It's dangerous, but it doesn't require you to have that kind of aggressive response. It's not like two gangbangers trying to kill each other, right? That's two different scenarios, okay? Both involving a gun. And the way that law enforcement responded to Adam was as if it was two different gangbangers trying to kill each other, and that was not the case. So what I'm trying to say is this, what a lot of people are saying. These kinds of technologies are not human beings, okay? These are not good replacements for old school, everyday, organic, mammal, social mammal engagement, pro-social engagement, this is not going to be a good replacement for community members and law enforcement to just sit down and talk to each other on a regular basis and figure things out with equity and inclusivity. This is not that. Instead, what this is once again, a law enforcement centered approach where it's just about who cares about the community. All we care about is what we want, which is reducing crime at whatever means necessary, which a lot of times means that Black and brown people and people that are impoverished are going to be the ones with the short end of the stick. And that's what Adam Toledo, his death is symbolic of, okay? And that this Adam Toledo died in 2021, I believe, or 2020. So it's not even that long ago when this happened, okay? So what I'm trying to say is this. We need to know what this data is being used for. We need to make sure that the right community members, not just any community member, but those who are most directly impacted by both high crime and high negative police interactions, that they are the ones at the helm deciding if the city government agency is even going to purchase or acquire the technology, and even if they do, how the technology will be used. And lastly, we need to make sure that there's not only a complaint process that's in place, like a structure, a mechanism that's in place, but we also need to make sure, most importantly, that there's regular quarterly and annual audits being done of the use of the technology. And as a result of those audits, there's a report, a public report that will be published on the city's website for everybody to see, that will lay out what the impact of the use of each technology has been that year. For instance, were there any violations of civil rights or civil liberties broken down by race, gender, age, location? Were there any complaints filed against the use of technology that year broken down by race, gender, age, location? How much money did it cost to use the technology that year, right? Because like, okay, so it cost this amount of money to do that, and we could have spent that money instead on building some youth centers, on affordable housing. You know, like, in order to make the case, you need the data, right? So, and also, what were the sources of funding? Because a lot of times, like I said, it's not just public sources of funding. It's not just the federal, state, and local government giving money to law enforcement and other government agencies to buy these technologies. It's also private sources like businesses, right? Corporations, fossil fuel companies, retail industry, technology companies, law firms, banks. They are also giving money to law enforcement specifically to purchase these kinds of technologies. Why? Because if they give them the money to do it, then there's no requirement that the public has to know what they did with the money, how much money they used it for. It's not like if you do it through the state, federal, or local government where those things are required. You just can't take this money and spend it without telling us what you're going to do with it, because it's our taxpayer dollars, right? So it's just making sure that these kinds of mechanisms are in place, and making sure that it's in place via law, not in place via, you know, an agreement out of goodwill, right? Like an MOU. It's like, no, we don't need an MOU. We need laws on the books to make sure that this is going to be in place for the long term. So I just want to say that's what we've done in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We made changes to they already had a law on the books that governs the purchase, use, and acquisition of surveillance technologies by all city entities, including the police department. And we made changes to it to do exactly what I talked about, the creation of a civilian oversight committee that will now be a part of deciding if they're going to purchase, use, deploy, acquire the technology. We also have another civilian oversight authority doing quarterly and annual audits. They'll also receive the complaints from community members about the use of the technology. And based on those complaints and their findings, determine if the technology use will be discontinued or not. And then lastly, as a result of their annual audit, produce a report publicly that'll be on the city's website, laying out those impacts that I detailed for you a little earlier. You know, and then lastly, the last thing that they do in the changes we made to the law that I think is phenomenal, okay, which is after the report is published, the next time that there's a city council meeting, right, the Civilian Oversight Authority has to present to the Civilian Oversight Committee or to the public, the city council meeting, which is a public hearing, an open meeting. They have to present to them their findings and their recommendations from that report, and then provide for a public comment period. That is a big deal. I know a lot of people, oh, whatever. Public comment is a big deal when we're talking about a democracy, okay? Why?
Absolutely.
Because that allows the community to just say what they want to say in their own words, however they want. And whatever they say, it is documented, it is recorded. That means that it is there for the long term. That means that you can reference it when election time comes for local elections, right? And you can say, oh, local lawmaker, you want to get reelected. Well, guess what? When we told you that this is what we wanted in our public comment, you pushed back on it and you said, no, we're not doing that anyway. So guess what? The same way we had the power to vote you in, we also have the power to vote you out.
Absolutely.
That's democracy. That's the way it's supposed to work. And so everything I do is all in the advancement of the continuation of the democratic process in the US, okay? That's all I'm doing. There's nothing more to it. I'm not trying to, take a rabbit out of a hat. I'm just doing very practical stuff. Let's talk to each other. Let's figure it out. Let's transfer knowledge. Let's build relationship. Let's problem solve. And let's do it with equity and inclusivity, right? That's how the sausage gets made. So if we want to do this for long-term solutions as it relates to public safety challenges, and that is the community empowerment centered approach through the CAP method.
Beautifully said. We have so many comments. Oh my God. I just let you share so that I didn't want to interrupt you again, but we have questions and comments, and then we're going to wrap it up in just a few because I still have work for tomorrow. Thank you everybody that's watching, who's here supporting this powerful platform tonight. And just know that we have such a great leader on here with us tonight, and it's an honor that he's sharing these great ideas and the work that he's doing. Okay, what about coded bias? So I'm just going to read a couple of things. Christina Laster said, what about coded bias? Bank of America operates that way on the West Coast. Many branches have no human interaction. See, I'm not lying. That is crazy. Oh my God, says Cheryl Huff. Artificial intelligence impacts supply chain and fulfillment. How do we start? By getting it on the books? Shaking my head. How do they know if they have it here? I guess in her part of town. And then also for the people, a police state is defined as a country in which the activities of the people are strictly controlled by the government, and the help of a police force and a military state is defined as a military government is generally any form of government that is administered by military forces, whether or not this government is legal under the laws of the jurisdiction at issue, and whether this government is formed by natives or by an occupying power. Thank you, Christina Laster. I love her. She's on point with her, definitions and different things like that. So that's super great. As far as you are concerned, what closing thoughts and statements do you have for the people? And also share where people can find you, all the information about you, what people need to know in trying to work with you, etc. Because we want people in the next few minutes to know that you're here in our community doing the work. You have these different classes set up for the people all throughout the nation. And if people want to get in contact with you, they can. You're a very great guy to speak with. So let the people know where they can find you, and any closing thoughts and suggestions, ideas, etc. that you have, my brother.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, thank you for having me tonight. And so I do have some closing thoughts. As just 5 points, I'm going to say real brief, that I think that I'd like everybody to take away from today's conversation. But before I say that, the best way for you to be in touch with me is through my website, which is www.mayers, that's M like Mary, AYERS, SOLUTIONS.com. So mayorsolutions.com with 2 S's, okay? The other way you can reach me is via email at empower, that's E-M like Mary, POWER at mayorsolutions.com. And then you can also reach me on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, and it's just look up Mayors Strategic Solutions LLC on Facebook, and you'll have you'll be directed to my company's Facebook page. And then lastly, if all of that, you don't want to do all that, and you're more of a LinkedIn person, you can reach me on LinkedIn at Carlton T. Mayers II Esquire, the same title that you can see that I have here on the screen for the Zoom meeting. And so that's how you can reach me. Then the 5 things, okay, these are 5 things to be aware of when it comes to public safety and policing reform, okay? One thing is what I talked about earlier, is developing a citywide reimagined public safety plan. This is something that a lot of communities are doing ever since the 2020 protests. It's actually been happening even before that. If you look at Cincinnati, Ohio, with the collaborative agreement, and even the consent decrees, obviously we know about that have been put in place all around the country. But more recently, ever since the 2020 protests, more municipalities and community members want to be more so proactive than reactive. And instead of waiting for the DOJ to do a pattern of practice investigation, which would then result in a consent decree, a lot of communities are saying, well, let's try to put together our own plan that's more grassroots based, where we're able to ourselves work with our local stakeholders like law enforcement, local lawmakers, et cetera, and come together with our own plan that we create, and instead of having it be created by the DOJ, right, the U.S. Department of Justice. So that's the work I'm doing in Milwaukee. Like I said, even in South Florida, I've been hired out there to do something similar. So that's something just to be on the lookout for. I know Ithaca, New York, they've done something similar. Brooklyn Center, Minnesota has also done something similar. So there's other places that are doing this as well. And also Omaha, Nebraska is another place to look at. But that's one thing, is looking at like solutions going forward, just considering that the federal government's not going to do anything on these issues. We know that already. And state governments, they go back and forth. Local government, same thing. You have to be empowered to do this on your own. So like I said, you can always reach out to me if you need any information or assistance on how to develop these plans in your own community. So that's one thing. The other thing is the surveillance technology, which I talked about already. And just understanding it's about the access to the data, right? We need to know what's going on with all this data, okay? Because it's worth a lot of money and it's all about you. So we need to know what's going on with it. We live in a democracy. That's our right, okay? And then to make sure that there's guardrails if they're misusing and abusing this technology, right? So making sure that that's in place. Once again, like I said, if you want information on this, a lot of cities have already put together these municipal laws, ordinances, like Oakland, California, San Francisco, San Diego's done something more recently. Boston, Massachusetts, New Orleans, Louisiana, Grand Rapids, Michigan, where I've been doing the work, New York City, New York, they have the Post Act, which they're now trying to come out with another law to prohibit the weaponization of technology. And that's what AniYa was referencing earlier, is that they can also equip these technologies like unmanned drones and Digi dogs with tasers, tear gas, explosives. We saw that in Dallas, Texas some years ago, where they used a robot to blow up an active shooter. And they were also looking at purchasing a similar robot in San Francisco more recently this year, I believe, but that did not happen. I believe they tried to do it in Oakland, California as well. So just understand the technology is here, all right? So they're already using it and they have a lot of money to be able to afford this. And they also have a good narrative because they are down staffed. So it does make sense to use technology if you're not able to have human bodies. But like I said, the danger is that there are not guardrails, there are not laws in place so that we can have accountability and we have transparency and know what's going on. And most importantly, community empowerment, right? We don't have that direct involvement in the decision-making. So that's the other thing. One other thing to know about it, facial recognition technology is also a part of this. That's a big deal because data has shown, research has shown over time that facial recognition technology actually has a negative impact, especially on Black people, because it tends to misidentify Black people. In other words, it can say that, let's say you're pulled over of a traffic stop, an unmanned drone is being used for that traffic stop in addition to a human police officer. The camera on the unmanned drone has facial recognition technology. It tells the officer that you have an outstanding warrant for your arrest. It's actually not you, you're Black, right? It's another Black person, but the technology misidentifies Black people. So now that officer is going to arrest you based on that. That's a wrongful arrest. And then you're probably going to push back and say, no, you got the wrong person. Now the situation escalates. The officer uses force. Now somebody is unnecessarily severely injured or dead, okay? This is how the sausage gets made. So we have to put an end to it by making sure we have the right guardrails in place. And once they're in place, we got to make sure they're being enforced effectively, okay? So like I said, if you want any assistance with that, that's the work I'm currently doing around the country, locally especially, and also statewide. Let me know, because I would love to work with you on that. And then just one other thing, the training, we talked about that earlier, you know, incorporating directly impacted people into trainings. Know that Tucson, Arizona has been doing this for at least 4 years for mandatory supervisor trainings, use of force trainings, implicit bias trainings, crisis intervention techniques trainings, and they are considered the gold standard model on incorporating community members into the trainings. Matter of fact, they actually pay directly impacted community members to be role players in their trainings. So anytime they do the training, they bring them in and they pay them to be role players in those trainings. That's what I'm talking, reinvesting, right? Back into the community. This is how the sausage gets made, and that's how you change culture, okay? Then just last two that I want to bring up with you are decertification, meaning when you take away the license of a police officer, that's the authority they have that allows them to arrest you as an officer and get all those protections under the law and union contract so that you can't hold them accountable. That's also what allows them to use force on you and get all those protections and privileges that prevent them from being held accountable. When you take away that license, when you decertify them, okay, that's when now, if they arrest you, if they use force on you, it's the same thing as anybody, any civilian, as me doing it, right? Meaning that it would have to be a civilian arrest. It would have to be you using force on me because, you know, you're claiming self-defense as a civilian. So that's the same laws that apply to us would apply to them when they do not have their license, when they are decertified, okay? So when we talk about accountability, we talk about criminal, right? Having them locked up. We talk about civil, getting rid of qualified immunity, so that way we can hold them accountable for money. We could sue them for money. And we talk about administrative, and we talk about firing them, right? That's what administrative is. We're gonna fire you, right? We're gonna get you fired. But we've seen how even when you do that, if you lock them up, they come out of jail, they can still be a police officer. When you sue them in court for money, they can still be a police officer. When you fire them, they can still get another job at another law enforcement agency as a police officer. Look at what happened with Breonna Taylor's officer that killed her. He got rehired at another police department right next to the one that he worked at, okay? So what I'm trying to say is this: you can hold them liable in all those other ways, and they can still be a police officer and still victimize people the same way they did the person that, you know, the reason why they got in trouble in the first place, okay? So if we want to prevent them from re-victimizing, re-traumatizing other individuals, other families of individuals, then the best way to do that is to make sure they get decertified. It doesn't matter if it's criminal, civil, administrative. Make sure that they are being decertified. And the only way you can do that is to make sure you demand of the police chief or the sheriff, depends if it was a deputy or an officer who engaged in the misconduct, you make sure to tell them, when you fire them, you make sure to decertify them too, because it's only up to the police chief or the sheriff to be able to initiate the decertification process. In other words, the process of revoking their license to have police authority, okay? That also means, most importantly, that they can't travel or wander from one law enforcement agency to another. Anytime they engage in misconduct, they get investigated. When they're being investigated, they resign, and then they go to another police department doing the same kind of misconduct. When they get investigated, they resign again, they go another. So we saw this with Eric Gardner, the officer that killed him. He was a wandering officer, wandering from one precinct to another, engaging in misconduct. The officer that killed Mike Brown in Ferguson, he was a wandering officer. He went from one police department to another, engaging in misconduct, never being held accountable, always keeping his police license, his certification, never being decertified. So if we want to, the same thing with the officer that killed Breonna Taylor, right? He was not decertified, even though he was fired. If we want to prevent these killings from happening going forward, we have to make sure that we're demanding that these officers are being decertified, so that they cannot do this to somebody else again, period. So that's the other thing. And then just one last thing that I was going to say to everybody is, we also have to understand that when we're talking about public safety and police accountability, it's not only accountability with law enforcement, it's also accountability with neighbor to neighbor, okay? Because there's a lot of neighbor to neighbor contact and engagement that's either happening or not happening that ends up resulting in a lot of public safety challenges, okay? So if we're not talking to each other, even neighbor to neighbor, then it's really hard to address problems in the community that could ultimately result in criminal activity. So we have to start even talking to each other and understanding that we as civilians, we have ownership over our communities, which means that we are also accountable for public safety in our communities, okay? So we just can't put everything on the police. We can't do that. We got to also understand that we have a role to play. And the same thing with local lawmakers, the same thing with local government entities, including sanitation, et cetera. We all have a role to play. Private business as well, local media, everybody does. So as long as we understand that, and we understand that all of us have to figure out how we're going to do this together, and that's where the planning, like I talked about earlier, comes into play. I think that we're going to figure this out. I'm very hopeful about it. But we have to understand there's no one-size-fits-all approach. Even the CAP method is not meant to be a one-size-fits-all. It's meant to be something that you can adapt, that you can mold into what you want it to be, okay? So just understand that it's all about us using our creativity and using our natural ability to do this. Just talk to each other. That's how we're going to figure this out.
Absolutely. Well, I thank you so much, Mr. Carlton T. Myers, Esquire, the second Esquire.
Yep, you got it. Yes.
I appreciate you, and so does the community. We have like 55 comments. Christina Laster, I love you too, boo. I thank you for joining us. I thank all of you for standing in the gap with us this evening. Instagram was popping tonight as usual. We had to take Instagram down though just moments ago. We were going to bring Instagram back up. However, we're just going to leave Instagram where it's at because Facebook captured everything. YouTube will be going up on YouTube after this for sure. Mr. Wiley, if you want to get in contact with the great attorney, don't worry, I can make that happen for you, sir, because I know you would definitely have a great conversation on your platform. With that being said, we are going to shut it down. We thank you. We appreciate you. And we hope you have a super blessed night. Thank you for all the hard work you're putting forward. And let us know how Saturday goes for sure. We want a full recap and let us know how the community is receiving all of the great work you're putting forward.
Thank you. And also, and please do let me know if you'd like me to come back. I'd love to talk more about these issues and other issues as well. So thank you for having me.
Of course, and I will for sure, because we need to get this information to the public, and every day something new is happening. So let's make it happen. Let's work together and let's continue to break these barriers of injustice and abuse, I want to say, because at the end of the day, that's what this is ultimately, and we have to make a change.
And let's empower. Let's empower, right? Like let's focus on empowerment. That's going to be the key.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Carlton Myers.
Thank you. Thank you very much, AniYa.
Have a great night.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
All right, guys, we did it. We thank God for a beautiful soul working hard to make a difference in our community. And that's what it's all about, ultimately, right? So we just want to thank each and every one of you for joining us this evening and sharing the information and participating with your comments, with your love, with your questions. Wow, so interactive tonight. And like I said, I'm constantly working on something, constantly building. Tomorrow, big day. I'll be there approximately around 2 p.m. This college is like, I think the first time I'm going to Kingsborough Community College, but I'm definitely an activist. You're going to see an up and coming flyer in just a few minutes, just so that I can reinforce the work that we're doing. The information will be there. You can catch not only me, but a lot of guest speakers, a great coffee tasting, food tasting. I haven't been able to eat recently, but that's another story. Hopefully I'll be able to eat something tomorrow for sure. But either way, guys, I want to say tonight was amazing. And I'm super happy that we did this because we have to let the people know what's going on there. And ultimately, know your rights. Know what's happening, know your rights, so you can be better educated, so you can be better empowered. Thank you to my Tennessee look, Nan chapter team, hold on. Because a lot of people don't know, I got 2 pins for Nan. Wait, can you see that good? Hold on, guys. The Nan pin, hold on, wait. There you go. Nan 1, Nan 2. I have 2 Nan pins, 1 white one and 1 black one, you know, the yin and the yang thing. And what else? I think we covered everything. I'm exhausted, but I got more work to do for the evening before I shut it down. But I'm happy, I'm blessed, and tomorrow's Haitian Flag Day. I'm not happy because Haiti is in the ruts and just horrible, but I am happy that I've been able to do everything on my checklist basically so far this week. And on Friday or next week, I will be back with more updates. Until then, Foster Care Task Force, May 31st, coming right around the corner. We're gonna have another great interview of another brother very soon, Brother IB from IB Fit. Such a great name, such a great fit for the work that he's doing. Stay tuned for that. And shout out to everybody that's supporting. If you want to be a part of the Foster Care Task Force and help make some effective changes, reach out to your girl AniYa A. DM me. Don't call me because my phones, all of them are just blowing up. Okay, but I'm so happy and I'm blessed because the idle mind is the devil's workshop. So when you're not doing anything positive, when you're not busy doing God's work or community work or what have you, in my opinion, that's when the enemy gets real feisty with your life. Anyway, let me get going. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much. Peace and blessings.